Welcome to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. I'm Collin Whitchurch. Sean Zerillo is here with me, and we are back for another season of Major League Baseball. Spring training has begun. We're so excited to bring you MLB betting content all season long. I know it doesn't necessarily feel like spring where you're at, Sean, just getting dumped on by about a foot of snow. I'm here in Chicago. It's not that warm here either. But in Arizona, they're doing long tosses. They're stretching out. They are playing spring training games. And this is basically what we're going to do right here in this debut episode of 2026 Payoff Pitch. We're on the backfields of Arizona right now, throwing long toss, throwing bullpens. Our producers are standing behind us with clipboards to iron out all of those kinks before we bring you a whole bunch of Major League Baseball content this season. So, Sean, just right off the bat, how are you feeling? I know you've been hard at work. You can look at all of the work that Sean's been doing in the Action app on actionnetwork.com. Futures, futures, futures. How excited are you that we are here with baseball right around the corner? WBC next week.
Yeah, I'm pumped, man. I'm so excited that I had to get that player futures article out. So I literally the day before the blizzard hit here, round tripped it to Atlantic City and back, shoved thousands of dollars into the terminals in individual sports books where they would not let me place those bets online. So we were able to get all the bets in. We've pivoted to player rewards now. I'll be dropping that article probably on Thursday, and then I'll be getting the WBC preview out on Monday. So simultaneously running models for team projections, player projections, and for WBC team projections. And I think the real mission now is trying to knock off this list I have of players in my WBC projections who we do not have statistical data for, which is the most fun part of projecting to WBC. Currently, I have, let's see, about 162 names, including mostly the Czech players and 21 Brazilian players and 19 Nicaraguans who I need to figure out how to quantify their contributions for the WBC. So probably spending the most time on the WBC at this point because it's the one that I have the least amount of data for, but it's also the one I'm most excited for. I really can't wait for that tournament to get going next week. I think we've got something really special cooking. I know just came off the Olympics. We have the WBC, and then we've got the World Cup coming later this summer. So I think people are going to be really excited for another international tournament. And for the good American players to actually be there, even though we just learned the other day Tarek Skubal is just going to show up to start for the Great Britain game and then he's bailing. So,
Yeah.
like, in terms of projecting this out, right, does Tarek Skubal actually add anything to Team USA? Not really, if he's going to be pitching in a game that we were already expected to win anyway. So, yeah, it's going to be a fun thing to project out, but it's also kind of funny because it's like, Tarek Skubal, so glad to have you on Team USA. You're actually adding 0% to our chances of winning.
Yeah, setting the table here a little bit for what you can expect from us here on Payoff Pitch coming weeks, month leading up to opening day next week. We will have our WBC preview episode, previewing the whole tournament, first couple games. We'll have WBC episodes spread throughout. You'll also see WBC content in the Action app from Sean, breaking down these games. Obviously, we know the big names from the big teams, USA, Japan, Dominican Republic, etc., Puerto Rico. But yeah, breaking down the nitty gritty from the Czech team, the Great Britain team, Australia, some of these teams with
Great
fewer.
Britain's not bad. Great Britain has a bunch more, MLB dudes than they had previously.
Yeah.
I mean, I think last time it was just Harry Ford, Jazz Chisholm's on the team this year. So there's actually like a much bigger smattering of MLB players across these rosters than there even were for the last tournament. So I really do think like the games are going to be more exciting because there's just a lot better rosters than we saw last time.
Yeah, two of my White Sox on Team Italy. But um, yeah,
Italy's solid.
and then we will have preview episodes for the 2026 MLB season all throughout the month. We're going to have episodes on each individual division, division by division, go team by team, look at their World Series odds, division odds, player props, just any type of futures you can think of. We'll have special guests on a couple of those episodes. I know people will be looking forward to hearing from Anthony DeBundo, if we can get him to join us to talk about his Phillies on the NL East episode. We can talk shit about what the hell they've been doing this off season. Maybe looking at getting a special guest for the NL West episode as well. We'll have long shots I know last year Jim Turvey, our big long shot futures guy, for an episode where we talk about these guys who 50 to 1, 100 to 1. Sean, you hit a big long shot last year on
Schwarber, yeah.
Schwarber, right? RBI leader.
Hmm.
Um, so we'll be looking to give those out to you as well in the weeks ahead. So stay tuned in to Payoff Pitch. Make sure you're getting this podcast updated wherever you listen to your podcasts, or subscribe to Action Network's YouTube channel. We'll have those episodes up there as well. Really
Hit
excited.
Freed
So like I
Woods leader
said,
at 40 to 1 too. Cashed a couple big ones last year in
that's
that long
right.
shot
That's
spot.
right.
So
Yes, yes, yes. The proof is in the pudding right there. Listen to this episode, listen to these episodes, get these picks, cash in October. But like I said, this episode, we're just kind of setting the table. We're going to talk some big picture stuff, recap the offseason. You've been busy all offseason, I'm sure, with football, Super Bowl, not really uh, tuned fully in. So this episode, we're just going to be setting the table a little bit. We're going to talk some big picture stuff. We're going to look at the offseason, recap the offseason, and get us set up. Stay tuned to those future episodes for a lot more actionable picks. But Sean, I'm going to start right off the top with where we left off at the end of October with the Los Angeles Dodgers, our defending World Series champions, our defending two-time World Series champs, going for a three-peat. This year, the big news they made this offseason, obviously signing Kyle Tucker away from the Chicago Cubs. Also Edwin Diaz away from your Mets. But that happened so early in the offseason, I feel like people almost forget that.
yep.
Short up their biggest weakness. Every single year, I feel like we run into this, whether the Dodgers just came off the World Series or not, is handicapping this team. How do you do it with such a heavy World Series favorite? I handle the golf content here at Action, and it's very similar to when Scotty Scheffler's playing in a tournament. It's listed at 230. Everyone else is listed at 20 to 1 or something like that. Everyone can check out your projections on the Dodgers in the Action app. We'll have more in depth on this team as the spring training goes on. But just some high level thoughts on the Dodgers and what they did this offseason and how we're approaching them heading into 2026.
Yeah, so basically I make the Dodgers essentially in line with their futures odds plus 230. I think no matter, how highly you project them, all the public projections out there, nobody really has them higher than about 30%. Even Ohtani MVP, Ohtani MVP is minus money. He's going to be back on the mound this year. Ohtani MVP, I can't really get past 40% and plus 150. So when I eventually get to the MVP market, like there's going to be reasons for me to take shots against Ohtani just because no matter how highly you project the Dodgers and in order to get the Dodgers to 30%, I basically had to tell my model, yes, they're a 103 win team in the regular season, but they're a 110 win team in the playoffs, right? Like they consolidate and get better. Otherwise, the model was trying to put them at 20%. And if you look at Pacoda's model, Pacoda has the Dodgers at 20%. So there's some fudgery going on in my model to get the Dodgers to 30% because I do think they consolidate and get better in the playoffs, but I don't think Pacoda is taking that, little fudging and getting them above 20%. So there probably is value out there on a team to win the World Series. If you look across the projection market, it's probably the Mariners, including in my own projection. But going back to the Dodgers and their chances of winning this year, and I think people need to keep this in mind in general. We have the looming lockout next year. Teams are just going to be a little bit more aggressive in pushing on the gas pedal with their prospects, getting rid of prospects, bringing prospects up. Signing guys we saw obviously this offseason. The Mets, going into luxury tax territory, paying Bo Bichette on paper $20 million a year. But when you factor in all the luxury tax thresholds that they crossed in that signing, he's actually making, or they're paying him equivalent of $40 million a year once you factor in the luxury tax and what it costs to actually put him on their roster. I think Kyle Tucker's salary as well is essentially doubled, because of what the Dodgers pay in terms of luxury tax. So if they're paying him 30, they're really paying another 30 to the league as well. So not surprised to see the Dodgers, with back-to-back World Series championships, shore up their closer's role, which was the biggest weakness, add an outfielder, which was their biggest weakness offensively, and not only adding ones, but adding the best two ones at their respective positions, probably the best two overall free agents. But they also have prospect depth to deal from too, and people don't realize this. I don't think they'll deal away a guy like Zaire Hope, but if it's for a pitcher like Tarek Skubal, they would certainly consider it. So that is like the big fear, in the baseball world right now is do the Dodgers cash in their prospects for Tarek Skubal and just kind of certify their ability to win a third World Series. I do need to point out though, the win total for this team opened at 104 and a half. They haven't cleared that since 2022. They haven't won 100 games each of the past few seasons. They've kind of started out struggling and then ended up bouncing back. They've had a number of pitching injuries. They've honestly been a little bit unlucky in the regular season. So their win total did come down from 104 and a half to 102 and a half, but I think this is safely a 100 plus win team with the upside of breaking the major league regular season wins record, especially now that you have Diaz shoring things up at the end of games, because I feel like they blew so many games in the ninth inning last year and in the late innings last year with their bullpen. So yeah, it's an absolutely terrifying Dodgers team. But kind of no matter how you project them out, there's no justifiable value on them to win the World Series. We didn't find that last year until they didn't clinch a top two seed, and ended up being the third seed and not getting that first round bye. So yeah, I'm just as high on them, I guess, as you possibly could be. But that being said, there's no justifiable value in the Dodgers or, in my opinion, on Ohtani's MVP futures, even though if he plays a full year, he's likely to run away with it. So our producer Gifford had asked me a few weeks ago, is there value on Mookie Betts in the MVP market? And I specifically told him no, because Kyle Tucker's there now. And if somebody on the Dodgers wins MVP, I think it's likelier to be Tucker than it is Mookie Betts. That said, I actually did rerun the projection, Gifford, and I think I make Mookie Betts about 30 to 1 now, and you can get him as high as 50 to 1. So yes, there is a slight edge on Mookie now, but there's also a bigger edge on Kyle Tucker. That's sort of where my projections and my percentages reallocated beyond Ohtani was into Tucker and into Betts. But it just shows you how strong this team is. Because even I think like 20th on my MVP board was Andy Pages. Like, the model's just like, oh yeah, this guy can also have a 5-win season, if he progresses and everything goes correct. So it just shows you the amount of upside overall in that roster. It's not even just the stars that it's the quote unquote fringe guys who actually still have potential to exceed even what they've done so far.
Yeah, I think the thing about the Dodgers, they're from a betting perspective, they're so uninteresting until October at this point. But the thing to wonder about if you're betting their futures, if you're betting their win totals, is they kind of almost punt the regular season to a certain extent. Like, yeah, they underperformed last year and got to 93 wins, and that's because you see these games where they're just like Dave Roberts is like, this game doesn't matter. I'm throwing this replacement level arm right now because we have our models, we have our innings projections for the Tyler Glasnows and the Blake Snells of the world, and it's just like we just need to get to October and then we will turn into a fire-breathing dragon. So that's like if anyone's ever like, oh, they're gonna set a wins record, I'm sure there are some sports books out there that have will the Dodgers set the wins record odds out there that will probably have terrible value. But if you're betting the over on their win total, anything like that, you have to factor in that this team is just essentially like we've never seen that in baseball before. You see that in like NBA all the time, right? Where it's like we're gonna coast a little bit, get to the playoffs, and make
He
sure one
load
of their
manages
healthy.
his pitchers, but in
Yes.
specific games, they even did it in the playoffs against the
Mhm.
Mets 2 years ago. In the NLCS, there was a game where they fell behind, and they were like, "We're not going to bother trying to play catch up today. We're going to beat you tomorrow." So yeah, there will be instances, 1-2 times a month where the Dodgers just don't think they have the pitchers that day, and they'll throw out a sacrificial lamb for a bunch of
Yeah.
innings, and if they fall behind multiple runs, they'll pack it in for the day. So completely agree with that. It's just, I'm staring down a rotation with Yamamoto, Glasnow, Ohtani, Emmett Sheehan, who I think is like a super underrated
Love
potential
Emmett
Cy
Sheehan
Young
this year.
candidate guy as well. And then Roki Sasaki if he develops as their fifth starter. And then maybe they go out and acquire Tarek Skubal too. So, and by the way, Blake Snell starting the year on the IL as well. So, like,
Right.
at some point, I do feel like they almost get lucky and not all of these dudes get hurt throughout the course of a season. And just by nature of them existing, it's hard for them to lose or hard for them to not win 110 games, right? If all those guys stay healthy. But
Yeah.
yeah, you do have to factor in the white flag games that they tend to have, which is noticeable when they do it. When I was growing up, Joe Torre for the Yankees, his whole philosophy was like, just win today. We'll figure out the bullpen tomorrow. Dave Roberts has very much taken the opposite approach of thinking bigger picture. And, today affects tomorrow because that's how baseball works. Every pitch today affects your pitching usage for tomorrow. And I think that's the modern approach that you need to take. And obviously, I'm sure the front office had a little bit to do in terms of instilling that, strategy within him to maximize their roster, right?
Yeah. So talk of the Dodgers here brings us kind of naturally into what the actual big story of the offseason was, which
Mhm.
is, and you alluded to it already, this impending lockout after the 2026 season. There's going to be a lockout, folks, after 2026. How long that lasts, how much it affects 2027, to be determined. I personally don't think the owners can afford to lose games. It's going to be long and arduous, but maybe we start the season a little late, but something's going to get done. But it's going to be the talk of especially as we get later into the season. The CBA is expiring. We're going to have a lockout. And Sean, I'm curious. When I was thinking about the lockout and I was thinking about this podcast, I was like, well, that's obviously a big deal, but is it really a big deal from like a handicapping perspective, from looking at the 2026 season perspective? Um, but you kind of alluded to teams pushing in their chips, teams reacting differently, knowing what is coming, knowing that there's going to be a lockout, and B, when the lockout's over, there's going to be a new CBA. So I'm just curious, like, how do you approach handicapping this season, knowing this looming lockout, and just kind of where teams are going to be at with aggressiveness of whether it's signings or trades or prospect promotions, stuff like that.
I feel like we usually don't see Jerry DiPoto make trades in the offseason. I feel like he gets aggressive a little bit more in season. The fact that he was the first trader mover of the offseason, flipping Harry Ford for a reliever, a left-handed reliever, and Jose Ferrer. And then right before spring training started, he went out and got Brendan Donovan, who fixes multiple issues for them in terms of second base and third base. I think that kind of tells you where we're at. Trader Jerry is always the most aggressive guy at making deals in the game. But again, he's not usually wheeling and dealing over the offseason. I think it gets much more aggressive in season. He's the guy trading in May when nobody else is. So I 100% think you're going to see the aggression meter turn up for some of these GMs this year because if we go into a lockout and these prospects lose another full year of development like we did during COVID, what are they going to look like in 2 years, right? If you're shutting them down from development completely. So, yeah, your assets may depreciate and you may want to cash in on them now for known major league commodities that could actually put you in position to win a title this year. But the pushback is the Dodgers are still so freaking good. So, like, what are you actually trying to gain by going up? I mean, at some point, you have to challenge the best team in baseball. You can't just assume they're going to win. But realistically, what do you gain by going for it in 2026? As opposed to hoping there's a lockout and you have a bunch of good prospects, and then you're the good team in 2028 when all the Dodgers stars are in their mid to late 30s. So that is the trade-off, right? Is kind of waiting out the lockout and hoping the Dodgers age out and their window closes a little bit. And then you have a great group of prospects like the Tigers or the Rays, and you can, the Brewers as well. And you bring up Jesus Mate when he's 21 years old instead of 19 years old. I'm not saying that the Brewers are going to trade Jesus Mate this year. I'm just saying they view their best team probably 2 years from now, as opposed to this year. So I'm sure there's a lot to consider for these organizations in terms of deciding whether to go for it this year. I think it's very evident with teams like the Mets, who've gone out and acquired a lot of guys who are essentially on 1 year deals. The Dodgers as well, just kind of continuing to push in their chips. I'm trying to think offhand, like aside from the Mariners making those small trades, who else is really like kind of gone for it this year? I guess the Orioles have a little bit too. They've acquired some win now pieces, Pete Alonso, Ryan Helsley, and we'll see if they consolidate their pieces. That's really been the issue with the Orioles. Like I feel like the entire time we've had the pod, and it's something I've talked about the whole time we've had the pod. They always had a million guys who could play corner positions. Kobe Mayo, Mountcastle, all the Westberg, like all the prospects they have in their system. Kjerstad, they never consolidated for pitching. In fact, they traded Grayson Rodriguez for Taylor Ward. They went the
Yeah,
opposite direction, right? And
they
then
got
tried to
another
sign a bunch of
corner
pitchers this
outfielder.
offseason. So I think it's very interesting how they built their team. But overall, the point is, I just think you'll see the aggression meter kind of amp up for teams this year. And by the way, shout out to Tony Clark for focusing on extracurricular activities instead of actually working on getting a CBA done. I think Tony Clark's legacy will be people asking wife's brother or brother's wife or wife's sister. That is like what people will remember about Tony Clark in hindsight, because I think that was the most popular phrasing on Twitter for about 2 full days.
Yeah. Who is it? And
I think it was
also which is worse? Which is
brother's
worse?
wife, right?
Um, the prospect end of this is really interesting to me. Obviously, coming from a prospect-ish background, rookie of the year is always one of those categories I'm obsessed
Hmm.
with betting. And you look at like
Yeah.
the top 10 prospects, top 11 prospects in baseball entering this season. I think 9 of the top 11 prospects are guys who have either already debuted or are basically major league ready. Right now, I think Jesus Mate and Leo DeVries are probably the exceptions. Everyone else,
Hmm.
though, Connor Griffin, Kevin McGonigal, J.J. Weatherholt, Max Clark, Sam Basayo, Nolan McLean, Cole Emerson, Bubba Chandler, Trey Savage, all guys who have either debuted or are ready. And especially with some of these teams, like the Tigers are a perfect example of this. We talked a little bit though, Sean, about the Tigers potentially trading Scooble to the Dodgers or whatever, but the Tigers are a fascinating test case in this
Hmm.
this season because they sat on their hands all off season, and I'm a Tigers hater. I think I established that very well last season that I'm a Tigers hater, but I'm like this is a team that should be pushing in all of its chips for a World
Hmm.
Series, and for most of the offseason, their biggest signing was Kenley Jansen, uh, and then they pushed in those chips for Framber Valdez, gave Scooble a running mate. They lost that arbitration case with Scooble, which cost them about $13 million. Boo hoo to the
Lost
Ilitch
him a bunch of
family.
goodwill with him as well.
Yes, very fascinating. But now they've got arguably the best 1-2 punch it's right up there with the Mariners probably in terms of Scooble and Framber against uh, Gilbert and Kirby. Um, but they
Oh, I'd go
have
Gilbert and Woo. Excuse me. I put Woo
yeah,
above Kirby.
excuse me, you're right. Um, but they have 2 of the top 10 prospects in baseball, and both are major league ready. Kevin McGonigal was just on the cover of Baseball America. Rare 80 grade hit tool. Max Clark is the center fielder they need. Every single plate appearance that the Tigers this year give to Javi Baez over Kevin McGonigal will be a crime. And they have been historically conservative when it comes to bringing these guys up. We saw it with, Mize and Jackson Jobe and Torkelson and Riley Green. And now they've got these guys, these ready-made guys at positions of need. McGonigal over Baez. Throw Max Clark in center field. McGonigal should be up opening day. Max Clark should be up at some point this summer.
Hmm.
How early they bring these guys up is going to be really interesting relative to what you were just talking about with the CBA. So with some of these aggressive prospect promotions, it's going to be. I'm curious to see how much if we see it early because of the pending CBA.
Connor Griffin conversation, same as the McGonigal one, right?
Yes.
Displacing Nick Gonzalez at shortstop for the Pirates. If the Pirates want to be a 500 team and compete for a wild card this year, you get Connor Griffin on that roster as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So,
That's another thing that was interesting this offseason with the pending CBA and with this fight for the salary cap is we saw more teams like the Pirates put out the "We Tried" front with, the pursuit of Kyle Schwarber and the fact that they actually did spend a little bit of money
yeah.
relative to what we expect out of them. The Pirates and the Reds were really aggressive in saying we're pursuing these guys, even if we're not necessarily going to sign them. But that's definitely an indicate like, oh, we're trying to spend money as the fight for the salary cap looms in the background. I do want to move ahead though, Sean. We're going to talk a little bit about the big rule change
Hmm.
this offseason, going into this season. The automatic ball strike system is here. The challenge system, it is not full robot umps. It
I
is a
haven't said that.
challenge system that has been tested in the minors since 2022. It was tested in spring training last year. Teams will get 2 challenges a game to challenge whether Ball was a strike, strike was a ball. The only people who can challenge them are the hitter, the pitcher, or the catcher. One of the articles I read, they even showed an example from the minors of someone kind of delaying their challenge and looking to the dugout to see if they should. And the umpire said, no, sorry, that challenge doesn't count. You've got to do it automatically. You can't get help from anyone else. So it's going to be really fascinating from that perspective. I could see some arguments coming where challenges are not allowed, and these guys are saying, "What the hell? Why not?" But also just from a handicapping perspective, with you know, I really thought a year ago or so that this was going to have a huge impact on player value for catchers with framing and whatnot. And it is. It's going to have a value, but maybe not as much because it's just two challenges a game. I'm curious, Sean, your thoughts on the ABS, how it has affected your handicap, if at all, and also just the general changes we could see to the game with pitch calling from the dugouts or changing in pitch mix, etc.
Yeah, I haven't factored it in like quantifiably in terms of my model or anything. I don't know how these players are going to compare in terms of adjusting relative to one another. I did think it was most interesting that the catchers had the highest overturn rate, pitchers have the lowest overturn rate. Catchers get it close to 56% of the time. Pitchers are close to like
And
30%
some
in
teams
terms
have
of
already
being.
said that pitchers straight up won't be challenging. Like they're just banning their pitchers from challenging.
I think the funniest outcomes are going to be when dudes who are like selfish, who want to avoid a strikeout, like a hitter, like a hitter with a bad eye who wants to avoid a strikeout, waste one, and you have
Yeah.
like Juan Soto on deck,
Yep.
and then Juan Soto's like flipping out, right? Like the teammate infighting as a result of bad challenges is going to be very funny to me. Uh, Obviously they have to test it for a year. So I'm not going to sit here and be like mad that they're, implementing the ABS system. I think it's a step in the right direction. However, why do we need to gamify this? Can we do this for a year, make sure it works, and then just make it automatic? Because it's called the automatic ball strike system, and because we're measuring every single pitch anyway. Like, do we need to make this a mini game in terms of, oh, you used your challenge? Oh, do I use my challenge here?
Yeah.
There's no point of that, right? If we get the call correct, if we can get the call correct, I'm fine testing it out for a year, but then let's automate it. That's it. That's my whole takeaway on this. Make
Hmm.
sure it works, automate it. Now, what is actually going to change in terms of like the strike zone watching games? I've read that they measured every player's height, and it's very funny. They accounted for a lot. They measured every player's height at the same time of day because we all shrink during the day
Yeah.
as a result of gravity.
Yep.
Very funny. Didn't
That
know
is very
that.
funny.
Um, the bigger takeaway is they're not accounting for crouch stances.
No.
It's based off of your height. So guys who have crouch stances are going to get a lot of what are perceived as high strikes called on them.
It's a good thing Tony Gwynn isn't rest in peace. If he was
Mm-hmm.
playing, it would be a big issue with his how low he got in his
I'm
crouch.
thinking the difference between Jeff Bagwell and Craig Counsell.
Yeah.
Bagwell in the full sit
Oh
down
yeah.
crouch versus Craig Counsell all the way up here. I mean, Counsell kind of came into the hitting zone before, but just think about that in terms of crouch stances and guys who are going to have to adjust to getting their hands on the high fastballs, the high plane fastballs. So people have already started to put out studies. Which pitchers have the most high fastballs called balls at the top of the zone, things like that. Which pitchers or which hitters have been unfairly, judged as a result of the zone. I think the biggest, like, if you've ever seen the data, the comparisons on the low strikes on Jose Altuve versus the low strikes on Aaron Judge,
Yeah.
that'll be the biggest, like, thing for me to look at this year. Like, how is Judge performing on low fastballs, high fastballs? How is Altuve performing on low fastballs, high fastballs, right? Like, take the biggest guys and the shortest guys, kind of compare how they've done in different quadrants of the zone relative to previous years. So, yeah, I think there's an adjustment period. And I do think we'll get into it. But we saw the Red Sox like go away from fastballs last year, right? And introduce more breaking balls. Well, if you gain more value throwing fastballs at the top of the zone because hitters are not able to get to those, but you are going to get those calls, maybe it makes fastballs a little bit more value again. Maybe you're only throwing fastballs up and you're going with the Charlie Morton strategy of fastballs up, breaking balls down. So I think it does change approach for certain players, certain teams as well. Are going to retrain their players to focus on different parts of the zone. But yeah, my main takeaway is let's test this for a year. If it works, please implement it full time because we don't need to gamify the experience of using your two challenges or not. And, whether your dumb teammate is going to waste one because he doesn't want to get, money taken away in arbitration next year because he has 200 strikeouts instead of 199. So,
Yeah. From a pure entertainment standpoint, the gamification I'm looking forward to
oh,
personally,
the
just because
anticipation of watching the call on
yeah,
the scoreboard is
yeah.
like,
The
you get
first
that,
time,
there's like that like you kind of
yeah.
gasp as you're like you
Mm,
hold your breath as you're waiting for it to come up. So yeah, it's gonna be very
yeah.
funny, but
People who watch
let's hope it
tennis
works.
should be decently familiar. It's going to be the same vibe as looking at those in out calls.
Yeah,
I
the
just
eagle eye.
know there are so many from a betting perspective situations I can just think of where I'm going to be pulling my hair out. You're sitting a pitcher's on its last couple pitches and you've got over 5.5 strikeouts and you think you rung him up and they challenge it and they didn't, or and Sean, I feel like this is going to be a big thing. Is you're sitting on a first five under 4.5, and the bases are loaded, and ball four, strike three. Whether it's going to walk in that fifth run to go
Yep.
over, there's going to be a lot of stress from a gambling standpoint with this ABS. It is a step in the right direction, like you said, though,
Undoubtedly.
but I'm going. It's going to be fascinating. Also, there's going to be 4 games this year that they don't have ABS for because they can't have
Mhm.
it in some of these. The Mexico City series at the end of April between the Diamondbacks Padres won't have it. The Field of Dreams game between the Twins and Phillies won't have it, and the Little League Classic in August also will not have
They're also
ABS.
are they not removing the strike zone from broadcast as well? Is that something I heard? Is that like a
Uh, it's
general?
it's going to be up to the broadcaster still, but they're going to. It's just going to be a bigger delay, is what I heard between like what they can see in the clubhouse or whatever. And when it goes up on Savant,
That makes sense.
there's it's going to be delayed, so someone can't just be watching and signal right away to challenge. But I believe I read that. Um, Yeah, it's just essentially going to be up to the broadcaster. Um, and also it is going to be very much like challenge systems and I guess what they do in MLB now or NFL, where you get extra challenges in extra innings. If
Mm.
you're out of challenges, go to the 10th, you get one more. If you use that, you go to the 11th, you get one more. So they're
Okay.
they're going to be pretty plentiful.
Yeah, that's gonna
Um,
get annoying a little bit in
yeah.
extras because teams are
But
just gonna use
these
them to
teams are
use
gonna
them.
have meetings about like situations to use it or not.
Hmm.
And like you said, there's gonna be some hothead who's just is really pissed about a call and challenge it, and their manager's gonna get pissed at them because they didn't challenge in the right spot. Because we're not gonna I'd be shocked if we ever see a challenge in like the first inning, unless it's like
Hmm.
the pitcher's on the ropes. It's the game's about to get out of hand situation. Um, the gamification. I think you're right. It's we eventually they need to go all in on this, but from a game theory standpoint, I guess it's going to be fun to see how these teams, the smarter teams, manage it versus the dumber teams manage it. When the White Sox are playing the Dodgers and Dave Roberts against well, I like Will Venable, but the general White Sox-ness of screwing things up. It's gonna be a big storyline all year.
45 minutes before the first White Sox reference. It might be a record for Payoff Pitch podcast.
I thought I mentioned them already, but I got the hat on.
I think you
Uh,
mentioned your hatred of the Tigers, so by proxy, that might have been
right,
the
right, right, right. I hadn't brought up Munetaka Murakami yet, who's gonna be
mm,
my guy all
home
year.
run total over. Love it.
Yes, looking forward to getting some bets out on them. But I do want to talk to you about, I feel like we talk about this every time this year, or sometimes we don't talk about it, and then the season starts and we're like, oh shit. um, Baseball changes.
Hmm.
What we can expect there. Um, what it was like last year versus previous years. Where are you at on potential changes to the baseball this year?
Yeah, so I'll take you guys back through the brief history of the evolution of the baseball, since we've been kind of covering this, but it really just dates back to 2017. So 2017 was the record-setting home run year where the Bomba squad for the Twins hit 1 million home runs. I think we had three teams who are now the three highest individual season home run teams of all time. So Meredith Wills, scientist, she started cutting into baseballs. She found that they juiced the balls, 2017. It was pretty obvious in the numbers, but we got confirmation of it. 2019, 2018, it dipped a little again. 2019 went back up, home run rate. And Justin Verlander talked about them juicing the balls. Also talked about the seams being lower, I believe. And we looked into the drag rates. You could see the drag rates on Baseball Savant. 2019, introduced some juice balls again. 2020 was the COVID year. We definitely had some mixed baseballs within that year, different batches of baseballs. 2021, baseball clearly dejuiced the baseballs. They said before the year they were going to dejuice the baseballs. Again, Meredith Wills cut into the baseballs. They found that the league actually was using the old baseballs to get rid of them for part of the season and then introduced the new dejuiced baseballs at some point during the season. Now, there were points in the same game where a pitcher could pick up different baseballs. One of them was the dejuiced ball. One of them was the juiced ball. So MLB has done a very terrible job in terms of the quality control of introducing and exchanging these baseballs. Because then in 2022, they found that MLB used 3 different baseballs over the course of the season, including the Goldilocks baseball as part of Aaron Judge's home run chase. Yes, they were specifically introducing juiced baseballs to help Aaron Judge break the home run record. This is not me hating. This has been proven by baseballs that have been caught that Judge hit that have been sliced into. By the way, they also introduced those at the All-Star game, in the Home Run Derby, and at other major events as well. They got caught doing it. To my knowledge, they have not done it since. Now, 2024, everybody's convinced the juice ball was back. Pitchers, scouts, the ball was flying again. The data didn't suggest it, but the players at this point, and fans at this point, and handicappers at this point, we don't know what to do on an annual basis in terms of what ball to expect. Last year, the ball was traveling 5 feet less. Earlier in the year, it ended up evening out over the course of the season. Pitchers also complained about there being raised seams. So I tell you all of that to say we do not know. I would hope that they keep the balls the same from one year to the next. What I did learn in terms of my studies this offseason, this is something I didn't know previously, and I think this is relevant if you're using Stuff Plus data or translating any sort of minor league data. Did you know that the minor leagues use 2 different baseballs, Colin?
If I did, I forgot. That doesn't ring a bell for me.
AAA uses the same baseball as MLB. It's produced in Costa Rica. It's higher grade material, better workmanship. Every other level of the minor league uses the minor league baseball. It's made in China. It has lesser quality material, and there's a noticeable difference in the spin and the data on those pitches. So if you're taking AA, single A data from pitchers, stuff data, etc.,
Right. I did know
and
it
hitter
because of
data,
that. Yeah.
it's actually different than when they get to AAA. So if you're looking at minor league data, and there are people now on Twitter who are posting a lot of minor league data,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trust that stuff data until they get to AAA because they're throwing a
No.
different baseball. That was like just the main point there. So we don't know what kind of Major League Baseball we're getting, but we do know the baseball that they use in AAA versus AA. And it's a little bit easier to trust guys in terms of their AAA pitching data as opposed to AA.
Yeah. So what we get this year is how early do you think it's going to be until we have data or you notice something yourself that
Two
makes
weeks,
you actually like, what is it?
2 weeks,
2 weeks
maybe
probably.
even sooner. You can see the drag coefficient data on Savant pretty quickly. We can also kind of compare launch angle, exit velocity. And the problem is when people try to compare launch angle exit velocity, they're not accounting for weather. They're not accounting for humidity. They're not accounting for wind, right? So people try to be like, oh, this ball flew 20 feet further with the same launch angle exit velocity. They
Yeah.
use that's not necessarily true. But once you get a big enough sample, you can kind of compare generally how it should have flown. So it's tough because then you're comparing April weather against like
Yeah,
midsummer
the
weather from
weather.
last year, right? it's not a one-to-one comparison, but yeah, if you give me a couple weeks, I think we could know with a decent amount of confidence, what the changes in the baseballs might be. Also, spin data, etc., on these pitches too. Coming out of the hand, the pitcher's hand, you can get a little bit of a read off of it. But at the same time, in terms of exit velocities, etc., I do think we're going to continue to see fewer fastballs in general. I know I just talked about like the high fastball stuff at the top of the zone. The Red Sox drastically went away from fastball usage at the start of last year. They ended up realizing that you need to keep hitters guessing and you can't purely go no fastballs, but you can reduce the fastball usage. I believe the Nationals this season have essentially stopped throwing fastballs in spring training. I believe the Nationals hired a new director of pitching development and hitting development in addition to a new GM from the Phillies, but they brought in a driveline hitting instructor. They brought in like external pitching. So like, that's the kind of stuff. And I just want to address something like that here. If you're looking for teams, maybe not necessarily within a year to make changes, but forecasting 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, the Nationals totally overhauled their player development system and they totally overhauled their front office. So that was a team that was very anti-analytics. I think they're going to become very pro-analytics in a matter of a season, let alone a couple of seasons. So if a team like the Nationals this year is surprising people, they're winning games in April that they shouldn't, it's probably going to be because they've completely overhauled their pitching approach and their hitting approach. In terms of player, maybe it hurts them, right? Maybe these guys aren't used to doing that and they end up performing poorly. But I
Well, I
think,
was gonna
a
say
team like
that's
that could potentially surprise in April because they're doing things that you don't expect. So those are things that we can kind of quantify, or at least we know about. The baseballs we're just kind of guessing with.
yeah. I
But
mean
that's the large takeaway is like, look for teams like the Nats or whoever that we know have actual made like sweeping changes that they could end up implementing where the baseball is everybody's going to be playing with, so it doesn't really matter because everybody's on an even playing field in terms of that.
yeah, the changes the Nationals are making. I mean, again, if you're playing the drinking game, go ahead and take a drink. But we saw that with the White Sox 2 years ago, and it takes a while for that stuff to like really take hold organization wide. Like the White Sox were that team that was a decade behind everyone from a development standpoint, and
They
they
were in a
found
terrible spot in terms of their international
yes,
signing, like
yeah,
the
they didn't even
inroads
own
and the
a Traject
relationships that you
machine
have to
until
make to all
last
those
year.
countries. They had to improve that. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly that stuff takes hold with the Nationals, also with the Rockies. Regardless of what you think about Paul DePodesta, the fact that they presumably have someone who's going to be thinking differently in
Peter
that
Gray,
front office. Whether he's thinking differently in the right way is to be determined, but they're going to have someone thinking differently there. The
he should hire
Nationals.
Jonah Hill to be his second in command.
Absolutely. Um, with Major League Baseball right around the corner, now's the perfect time to get yourself an Action Pro account. Get real-time pick alerts from experts like Sean Zerillo, access to Sean Kerner's strikeout prop projections during the season, and more. Right now, new subscribers can get $20 off a year of Action Pro at actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code POD20. Again, that promo code POD20 for $20 off an entire year of Action Pro. So you'll be covered for March Madness, which is coming up, NBA leading up to the playoffs, the upcoming baseball season, of course, and more. Plus, next college football and NFL season. So don't wait. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro. Right now, use promo code POD20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, Sean, we've talked quite a few big picture things heading into the season. And again, we're going to have so much more in the coming weeks about team futures. But I'm curious, we've seen so many transactions this offseason, players changing. We talked about Kyle Tucker. I'm curious if there's anyone, not necessarily from a futures perspective, but like when we actually get into these games, some teams that you're really looking forward to seeing that caught your eye that you're looking forward to gambling on or gambling against on a daily basis, just based on what you project those teams to be this season.
I think one data point that really stood out to me last year, this isn't a specific team, this is relative to specific players who were there last year. The Texas Rangers had something freaky going on in their stadium that collapsed offense. Fly balls just weren't leaving the yard. They were dying at the warning track consistently. And as a result, everybody on that roster had awful years. Jock Peterson, Marcus Semien, Seager. So the Mets went to reclaim some of Semien's value. They also are trying to reclaim some of Luis Roberts' value from the White Sox as well. We saw Robert perform well when he cared last year and seemingly did not when he did not care. But the teams coming into the year. So I'm always looking for the when you look at projections and you see the safe teams and the teams who are unlikely to make the playoffs, there's always going to be two teams from that group of 70+% safe playoff teams who don't make the playoffs. There's always going to be two teams from that sub 30%, 20% will not make the playoffs group that do make the playoffs. So who's going to miss that is expected to make? Who is going to make that is expected to miss? I think the Braves pitching is already falling apart, and Chris Sale remains a humongous injury risk. Their offensive seasons from 2 years ago still remains a major outlier relative to all of their other career performances. It seems like in hindsight, they all just happen to have a career year at the same time. Still a very talented team, but I just don't see the pitching depth. They didn't make it last year. And I think also if things do not go well, you shut down Strider at some point. You shut down Acuna at some point. Strider's velo, by the way, has not come back in spring. So forget losing Waldrop. Forget losing
Schwallenbach.
Yes, forget you losing Schwellenbach, who I love. Strider's velo is down in spring. Raylo's velo is down in spring. Chris Sale is one of the most injury risky top pitchers on the planet. So that's kind of what I'm looking for is teams who, if a few things start going bad, it's going to fold in on itself. Now, a team like the Marlins in the same division as the Braves have a ton of pitching. They have so much pitching, they traded Ryan Weathers to the Yankees and didn't lose anything.
And Edward Cabrera to the Cubs.
And Edward Cabrera to the Cubs. Thank you. Sandy, Yuri Perez, Max Meyer, Braxton Garrett, and then you're sitting on Tommy White and Robbie Snelling in AAA. I mean, you're talking about 6 quality pitchers every time they're taking the ball and in very interesting young lineups. So yes, people are focused on the Pirates this year. And I could go through the same thing with the Pirates and the Pirates pitching depth. Skeens, Mitch Keller, Braxton Ashcraft, I liked. Bubba Chandler. And then you've got guys like Hunter Barco ready to come up probably fairly soon. So I think there's teams who are going to make leaps. There's teams who are going to have collapses. Generally speaking, and this goes back, this is a good way to bookend the podcast. This goes back to teams being aggressive in terms of the prospect promotion. And if you have dudes who are near major league ready, the Mariners don't need any more help. The Mariners are loaded, but Emerson, another top prospect for them, they're probably going to add to their roster. If a pitcher gets hurt, they drafted Cade Anderson in the first round last year. He's probably the most major league ready pitching prospect from that draft. So look for the teams this year who have depth in terms of starting pitching in AAA, like ranked prospects, and then look for the teams who their pitching is starting to fall apart just a little bit. I think the Twins have a chance to be the worst team in baseball this year. Not with the roster that they have right now, not with Buxton on it, but they already lost Pablo Lopez. Joe Ryan is apparently dealing with an injury issue. We like Zebby Matthews, but he has injury concerns as well. There's like some serious downside there. Now, do they win fewer games than the Rockies?
Also
Probably
ownership.
not.
Also ownership uncertainty that they might just inspire a teardown.
And that's probably where they're headed. And that was my larger point. Now, Buxton did stay at the All-Star game last year, and he has a no-trade clause. Buxton said he won't waive his no-trade clause, so that's a hurdle to get over. But if they're going to be ripping down the ship around him, he may want to get out of there first. So, I just look, don't anchor yourself to the projections, right? because it's very easy to do that. It's very easy to see every projection has this team. The Twins, every projection has them around 70 wins. The win total, or every projection has the Twins around 75 wins. I'm closer to 70. I think projections view the talent on the roster, but they don't forecast out where that team is going to be in 4 or 5 months. So
Yeah.
if you want to potentially gain an edge on these projections and on the futures market, try to forecast out where these teams are going to be pushing their pieces 4 months from now. And, that is as easy to do as actually making up a projection from scratch. But I think you can reasonably ascertain based upon how they spent money this offseason, where their prospects are in their system, if they're higher up or lower down, and then what pitching injuries they sustain in spring training, because we always see injuries every spring. I think those are kind of three factors you can use to weight these teams appropriately into, will they jump up? Will they potentially fall down? I think the Phillies are a team, who did absolutely nothing to improve their roster. They have Zach Wheeler coming back off of injury, and the back half of their rotation is a little bit sketchy. The Padres did absolutely nothing, can't spend money, have an ownership controversy. The back half of their rotation is extremely sketchy. So I just named three teams: the Padres, the Braves, the Phillies, who are all favored to make the playoffs. I think two of those teams are probably going to miss. I think two of those teams can miss. I think one of those teams will almost certainly miss.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Phillies because that's the team that I think about first. Everyone's been waiting for that collapse, right? They keeping the band together. The Castellanos drama was kind of ripping the first band-aid off of this aging
Mm-hmm.
core that makes the playoffs, contends for a World Series every year. And my instinct is to say, well, this has got to be the year. They brought back JT Realmuto on that really strangely high deal for how old and bad he's gotten.
Yeah, Turner,
Again,
Schwarber, Harper, Real Muto are all 34 or 35.
exactly. And then you have Wheeler and Nola, and Wheeler coming off that bad injury, Nola coming off of an injury and being bad, losing Ranger Suarez. Chris Sanchez is legit, obviously. But the thing that I kept coming back to with Philadelphia is that the collapse risk is there,
Mm-hmm.
but I had trouble finding enough teams that
Mm-hmm.
were better than them in the National League to like kick them out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you believe in Atlanta, even if you do, like how many teams can you confidently say are better than Philly this year? If you're including Atlanta, it's Atlanta, it's New York, it's maybe the Cubs and then obviously the Dodgers, right?
Mm-hmm. And
That's
maybe the Brewers, but probably not. Yeah.
yeah, maybe the Brewers. They're a different animal, but even while factoring in that potential collapse from Philly, I'm still like, well, they could be bad. They could regress down to 85 wins and still make the playoffs, you
Yeah,
know?
the Giants or the D-backs probably need to jump up in order to
Yeah.
like knock a team like the Phillies out, right?
You talk about potential stealth
The
worst team
Pirates.
in baseball candidates. Arizona's right there for me, but
Mm.
Minnesota, by the way, while you were talking, I looked. They're 30-1 right now to finish with the
Hmm.
worst record in
Yeah, it's
baseball.
not bad. I saw somebody posted on Twitter yesterday, which, respect to you, I literally was thinking about that like the day before, and then they ended up dropping it online, and I was like, yeah, I guess I was onto something there. But yeah, just like these teams on paper going into the year are not what they will be in 4 months. It's very
Yeah.
easy to say that, but try to forecast out directionally where you think they're headed. Twins, Padres, Arrow, way down for me, 4 months from now. A
Yeah.
team like the Marlins, I think the Arrow could be way up. The Pirates, way up.
Yeah, Miami's interesting. You talk about the pitching. The pitching is they pull pitchers out of their ass every year. It seems like the question with Miami is whether you said it's an interesting lineup, and I agree with you. But whether these guys is Jacob Marcy going to pick up where he left off with his hot second half last year? Can they turn Owen Casey into this year's Kyle Stowers? And can Kyle Stowers, with his putrid in zone contact rate, can he continue what we saw from him last year? Can Augustin Ramirez throw out a base runner?
Hmm. Yeah, Joe Mack may end up displacing him at some point.
Yeah.
So a team like Houston, right? Good example. A team I love from a under miss the playoffs perspective, but no top 100 prospects, really not much pitching in AAA. Lance McCullers Jr. is still listed as their fourth start. Did Lance McCullers Jr. retire? I think he said he's retiring. His arm has been falling off for several years at this point.
Yeah,
Christian Javier is their number two starter.
yeah.
Mike
What?
Burrows, Ryan Weiss listed as their five and like, what do people see with the Astros? If one injury happens, if Hunter Brown gets hurt, that team collapses. Never
Yeah,
mind Carlos Correa as your cleanup hitter. I thought Carlos Correa's career was essentially done.
and he's only like 30, isn't he? He's
He's
31. He's
31,
31.
but
Yeah,
but when
but he
you
feels a lot
have leg
older.
injuries,
Yeah,
you start to run like you're Giancarlo Stanton.
yeah.
So,
Can you trust Jordan Alvarez to play 100 games this year? Like,
and even if he doesn't hit 60
yeah,
home runs, I still think they could be a
yeah.
a 500 team.
And Jeremy Pena had the offensive season of his career last year. Can you expect that again?
Never liked him.
Uh,
I think
yeah.
he's overrated.
Christian Walker's 35 now, and underwhelmed last year. Obviously, Amai is a big part of that rotation and what they
Mhm.
can get out of him.
But they have to use a six-man rotation because
Yeah, I
that's
actually
what he was
kind of
accustomed to
like
in Japan.
yeah, I actually kind of like Burrows and I kind of like Weiss. I thought those were some
Hmm.
nice under the radar moves, but um, you brought up the Rangers earlier, and I'm pretty bullish on Texas this year to
Hmm.
be probably the second best team in that division, probably be a playoff team. I'm a huge Mackenzie Gore fan, and I love getting him in that ballpark. From a fantasy perspective, he's a huge buy for me this year. But I gotta say, where this conversation's kind of who are we looking forward to watching, betting on this year. And my number one pick is Sagano pitching for the Rockies. He's their new Antonio Senzatella, uh, the most homer prone pitcher in baseball, maybe. Baltimore Orioles pitcher last year, for those unfamiliar. Tomoyuki Sagano signed with the Colorado Rockies this offseason. Set his over under Sean at an ERA of 6. What are you what are you taking there? I don't even know what the projection systems say, but the Rockies are, they're a circus act, and I'm looking forward to watching them. Maybe it's just because I'm a White Sox fan that this amuses me so much, because it's like there's one franchise more embarrassing than my own, and so I need to poke them with a stick a little bit. Um,
So I believe Derek Carty incorporated stuff into his new Bad X pitching projections, and he has Sugano at a 6.27 ERA.
there you
So
go.
I don't think it's going to go great for Tomoyuki Sugano in Colorado this year. I think Colin, this is funny. I was going to say it as a joke, and then I actually looked at the number, and it's not a joke. Sugano, by some projection systems, is projected to give up more runs than strikeouts generated. The
Oh my
bat has him
God.
at 80 runs allowed and 69 strikeouts generated. So I don't think I've ever seen that.
We are going to be watching that hard this year, especially if they keep throwing him out there, which is very, very possible with it being Colorado. They signed Michael Lorenzen, they signed Jose Quintana, still have Chase Dollander, but they don't have a lot of arms to throw out there, and they signed Sagano. They signed him to a major league contract,
Yeah,
so
pitch to
he's going to
contact
be
is
out
not the
there.
strategy you really want in Colorado, considering it is by far the highest base hit factor in all of baseball. We regularly discuss this. It's actually like not the worst place you could be if you give up homers. Cincinnati
No,
is the worst place you could be if you give up homers, but if you give up contact, it is by far the worst place you can be.
yeah, and I, Herman Marquez just signed a minor league deal with the Padres.
Padres,
Bless
yep.
him getting out of
He
there
should have been out of there
finally.
a decade ago.
It was John Gray trying to get John Gray out of there, and honestly, the history of pitchers leaving Coors who people think are going to get better when they leave Coors is not all that kind on them.
Chase
But
Dolander's next up for get him the hell out of Coors Field.
yep, hey, that's someone who can actually miss a little bit of bats
Oh
too.
yeah, he's throwing 99 in spring. I like Dolander
Um,
a lot.
yeah. Anyone else who we haven't talked about that we want to throw out there as kind of looking forward to watching as the season
A's are
gets.
going to score so many runs, just so many runs for the A's this year. I actually don't even think we fully saw them take advantage of their park last season. But I mean, that Kurtz, Langolier, Soderstrom, Rooker, McNeil, and Wilson are kind of like funny because it's just all contact
Yeah.
driving dudes in. And
Jeff
then
McNeil's
Butler,
basically older Jacob Wilson.
older Jacob Wilson, older left-handed Jacob Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just think the A's in that park are going to be entertaining because they're going to score so many runs. I don't think they're going to prevent runs from being scored. I don't think they're going to win 80 games. But I do expect, and I bet on quite a bit of their player props. I think as a result of that, there's some 80 plus, 90 plus RBI player props in the A's that are looking pretty solid. Kurtz is going to hit leadoff for them, and Kurtz is going to get on base a ton. So RBI opportunities for Langeliers, Soderstrom, Rooker are going to be abound. Fantasy purposes, enjoyment of watching baseball purposes, betting overs. Yeah, I think the A's are going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. I'm trying to see if there's any other teams that I'm like,
I'll throw one more.
I feel like everybody wants all the projection systems hate the Guardians again. All the projection systems hate the Brewers again. I'm
Yeah.
pretty much in line with
Yeah,
their
I think
odds.
we'll definitely get. It's going to be complicated with when we talk about those in the division previews. But I do want to throw one more team out there at you. The Cardinals projected. Pacoda has them at 95 losses this year. I don't have in front of me where you have them, but
I'm a little bit higher than market on them.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
here's my takeaway. They've traded almost all of the guys they can trade.
yeah.
So the team they have,
It's like
aside
Nootbaar,
from
I think, is left basically.
Newt
Like,
Bar,
yeah,
maybe they deal Liberator,
yeah.
maybe Jojo Romero, but by and large, I think this is kind of the group they're gonna have, and I really don't mind it. I think Jordan Walker could be a post type breakout guy. Victor Scott, I bet for steals leader. I don't think he, is like a great player by any means, but they have some young, interesting talent here, and they're going to be kind of enjoyable to watch. Mason Wynn, JJ Weatherholt up the middle.
Yeah. JJ
Nolan
Weatherholt's
Gorman.
going to be really fun to watch.
JJ Weatherholt is my projected favorite for NL Rookie of the
Yeah.
Year. I have him first. I have Connor Griffin second. I basically align with the market on Weatherholt. I think he'll be up on opening day, but
Hmm.
I generally think this could be like a youngish, interesting roster to watch. Their pitching
That
is not
pitching
great.
is the pitching is. I mean, Dustin May's your number two starter right
Right.
now. The reason I brought up the Cardinals though is I don't know if you saw this fact. Maybe you did, but it's fascinating to me. Again, Pacoda projects them at 95 losses this year. The Cardinals have not lost 93 games in a season, or maybe it's more than 93 games in a season, since Branch Rickey took over the team.
Hmm.
Branch Rickey took over the team in 1917.
And
So
who's their GM?
the old Red Sox guy, right?
Yep, Heim Bloom.
Heim
And
Bloom, yes.
Heim Bloom has always been the efficient, like
The
he's
teardown
been
guy.
David Stern's light, right? Like finding dudes efficiently,
Yes.
not necessarily like going for the full rebuild, trying to like, you know, be competitive in the midst of rebuilding. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I see a full collapse coming from that team. I feel like he'll find enough pieces that can contribute value that they probably still get the 70 wins.
It's so coded in. It's like the Pittsburgh Steelers of MLB, where every year
Yeah.
they look like they're just this is going to be it, and then
My
they
whole life, I would say they've overachieved like
yes,
relative to
hmm
expectations pretty much every
yeah.
season.
It has been
So,
more than a
except
hundred
last year.
years since they have been as bad as they're
That's
expected to be this
crazy.
year. Yes, uh, interesting stuff in St.
I guess
Louis.
they're due, right?
Yes, they're definitely due. Whether that pitching, Andre Palante. Woof. But let's leave it there. Let's put a pin in it there. We're going to have so much more to talk about in the weeks ahead. Again, as I remind you, full episodes previewing every single division. So we're going to touch on all 30 teams. We're going to touch on World Series odds, pennant odds, division odds, win totals. We're going to have props, homer leaders, strikeout leaders. We're going to have individual player over-unders on home runs, strikeouts, rookie of the year, MVP, Cy Young, etc. We're going to have so much to talk about over the next month, and we're going to have that all coming to you right here on the Payoff Pitch podcast. Be sure to stay tuned to your podcast feed of choice on YouTube at the Action Network's YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening to Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcast. And also be sure to check out the Action Network's Discord channel. So much baseball content there. Again, thanks again to Sean for joining me here on Payoff Pitch. And thanks to you for listening. We'll see you next time on Payoff Pitch, Action Network's Major League Baseball betting podcast.